Last video of the day on this September 19th, 2011. And this video I'd like to dedicate to being a person that has bipolar disorder. I think, to be fair with how people feel about me, also has to be filtered through that I have a mental disorder. I didn't know I had a mental disorder until I was 48, today 63, and at 48 I began taking medications, going to counseling, reading about the illness, and trying my best to try to continue to support my family, try to continue to work, and the stress of working was just phenomenal on me. Now, each bipolar person is different. Just because I can't work doesn't mean other people can't work. I don't have delusions, never have, but there's other people who have had bipolar delusions. I've never been homicidal, wanting to kill somebody. Other people that have bipolar can be very dangerous. So knowing the person, knowing their family, knowing their counselors, is much more a prediction of the difficulty they're going to have in life. Now, being bipolar, and all I can do is describe it, because if you're not bipolar, you don't know. Our minds race all the time. We have hundreds and hundreds of thoughts a minute. Our minds never shut off. We can be multitasking many things, watching TV, working the computer, and playing cards, and thinking of 4 or 5 different other ideas. I would say being bipolar is fun. I can sit right here with nothing to do and just let my mind run and race, and it totally entertains me. Now, certainly we have memory functions like normal people do. However, in addition to that, we bipolar people can think back on an experience and almost live it word for word and replay it like a videotape. So that can be an advantage, can be a disadvantage. Stress seems to be one of the main triggers of the symptoms of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. They're different in a little bit of their rationale and the symptoms. Certainly, to be fair to my children and to my wives and family, bipolar persons are not really pleasant generally to be around. We're very high stress, high demanding. When we're manic, we talk very fast. We appear to be jumping from subject to subject. A normal person sees that listening to us, but we don't see that because our minds have already processed it, and it's a continuous continuum to us because it's gone through our heads. It just hasn't come out our mouth, and our mouth is so far behind the thought process that it appears that we're jumping from subject to subject. Bipolar people have a hard time sleeping. We generally will sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, and if we do that, we find ourselves manic and usually in deep problems. We have to force ourselves to stay in bed or sleep for 7 or 8 hours, and that's not an easy thing. Even at my age, I go to bed at 9, I'm up at 3, I'll stay up for 1 or 2 hours, I go back to bed and wake up at 6, and then be up for an hour or so, and then back to sleep. So bipolar people, we have a very unique environment that we have to live in, and to stay somewhat normal and steady, our sleep pattern just does not fit the current world way people sleep. We don't go to bed at 9 or 10 and get up at 6 or 7 and go to work. Sometimes it's a real battle. Medications help a lot with the difficulty in sleeping. When we have difficulty in sleeping, it certainly causes confusion. It causes us to be short and irritable. Most of us have a real mouth on us. We can tend to slam doors, threaten people. Most people are intimidated by us because we have a mouth that can just cut the head right off of a person in 3 or 4 sentences. We're not conformist. We have a very difficult time conforming to society's rules and regulations. We kind of run according to our own drummer. But that can cause some problems. There's bipolar people that are in jail. There's bipolar people who commit very serious crimes. And then, of course, there's other bipolar people, perhaps like me. I've never been arrested. And everyone says that's luck. Well, maybe it is. I have a friend years ago that said it appears that luck goes to those who work the hardest, and they seem to have the most amount of luck. And I think there's some truth to that. So I want to be open and frank that living with a bipolar man or woman is not easy. We're a perfectionist. We expect ourselves to be perfect, and we expect others around us to be perfect. And of course, the Mormon Church exacerbated that situation because they wanted us to be perfect too. Well, those kinds of stressors, when we swing, we go manic and we go depressive. And manic is generally talking fast, thinking, starting a business, doing more in a day than most men and women can do in 6 months, and fabulous ideas, and we're very talented at choreography and dance and painting and music. Many, you look on the computer how many people that are famous and have contributed to the world were bipolar. Not always, because some bipolars are in jail and up for, death penalties and other kinds of things. So to understand bipolar, you got to read and you've got to observe. And what we have found is that finding medication that works can be years. It can be years, not months, not a year. Now maybe some people will get it in a year, but most of us don't. I've been everywhere from lithium to Depakote to Lamictal, and it just goes on and on and on. I've been on probably 9 to 15 different drugs, and I certainly have been around Ativan and Valium and sleep drugs. Many doctors will prescribe a myriad of drugs to try to calm the symptoms so people can live with us and we can actually work. But the drugs with me didn't work. Some of them would work 2 months, 3 months, and then they would fail. And I was a person called medically resistant, that drugs eventually, my system would get an immunity to them, and they didn't work. Lamictal is the one that I'm on now, and it is the longest one I've ever been on. It's probably been, 5, 7, 8 years. It's a drug that has a side effect. The drug is made for epilepsy and for seizures, but one of the byproducts, or one of the things the drug is not made for, is bipolar, but it works on bipolar. So many doctors will not prescribe drugs exactly for what they were made for, but want the side effects. And so the side effects of Lamictal is what I'm on. And of course, at the highest dose, when I took low doses of Lamictal, it did nothing. And now it's pretty steady. It stays in my blood 2 or 3 days, so even if I miss a medication, it's still in there. We also have a tendency to be on antidepressants, because the biggest problem with the bipolar people is that we don't get depressed. We get suicidal. And the numbers are very tricky. You can look in the computer and see numbers from everywhere from 6% of us kill ourselves up to 35% of us kill ourselves. There is a high risk being bipolar because we don't get depressed, we don't get blue, we don't get moody. We just wake up and decide we're going to kill ourselves, and we don't think of our families, we don't think of a job, we don't think of security. Those things have no meaning to us. And whether it's running a car into a freeway, a ramp, a concrete barrier, or a gun, or medications, jumping off, hanging ourselves. Those are all possibilities with bipolar people. So I wanted to be fair in the presentation of our family situation and some of the shunning and whatever. If families are not educated and they don't read and they're stupid, they can't deal with handicapped and or mentally ill people. There are many of us that live pretty productive lives with no stress, good medication, and security, and clean and organized environments. I am sure that many of the individuals that are in the Mormon church that are shunning me, my family and children, use the bipolar mental disorder as an excuse to say, well, gee, he's a bad person. Well, I've maybe done some bad things and been a poor husband, perhaps, and a poor father. I certainly have to take some responsibility for that. But how much is that personality and how much is that bipolar disorder? And when you promise to love, honor, obey, and respect a person, and the Ten Commandments tells everyone to honor thy parent, mother and father, and we don't, I think we have to look to the other person and say, why didn't you stay with a mentally ill person? Was he chasing you with a knife? Was he shooting at you? Those are certainly reasons to get away from that kind of a person. But I was never that way. I certainly was a yeller and a screamer, slamming doors, bursting out of the house, and taking long rides and not telling anyone where I was going when I wasn't on medications. But since then, things have calmed down, and some say, well, the damage has already been done. Well, there you come into forgiveness. Do you forgive a retarded person for being retarded? Do you forgive a blind person for being blind and he can't drive or take you somewhere? So in summary, I want to be fair that I am bipolar. I've been bipolar my whole life. I didn't know about it till I was 48, and now I do, and now I take extra precautions every day to make sure that my illness does not spread into my family and into my child rearing practices. So that gives you a little summary of bipolar. Thanks.